Welcome to Book Nibbles, Big Ideas, Small Bites. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People remains one of the most influential self-help books ever written, despite first being published in 1936. Its staying power comes not from flashy gimmicks or manipulative tricks, but from its timeless insights into human nature. At its core, the book is about learning how to deal with people in a way that leaves them feeling respected, important, and genuinely valued. Carnegie believed, and demonstrated through countless stories, that success in life often depends more on how we relate to others than on raw intelligence, technical skill, or even ambition. Reading his book feels like sitting across from a wise mentor who is gently reminding you of the obvious truths about human interaction, truths that most of us forget in the rush of daily life. Carnegie begins with a simple but profound observation. People crave appreciation more than almost anything else. In our dealings, whether personal or professional, we often default to criticism, pointing out flaws and mistakes, assuming that this is the way to improve behavior. But criticism, he argues, rarely produces positive change. Instead, it breeds resentment, defensiveness, and discouragement. He illustrates this with anecdotes from business leaders, historical figures, and ordinary people who found that harsh words close doors rather than open them. Think of a manager who constantly berates employees for small errors. Over time, those employees become fearful, disengaged, and resentful. But when a manager takes the time to acknowledge what is going well and couches suggestions and encouragement, the same employees will strive to improve. Carnegie's point is that humans, no matter how old or experienced, remain like children in one sense. They long to be appreciated and recognized. A practical takeaway is to replace criticism with sincere praise, to look for opportunities to encourage rather than correct, and to remember that most people are doing the best they can given their circumstances. This connects to one of Carnegie's enduring rules: give honest and sincere appreciation. The key word here is sincere. Flattery may work in the short term, but it rings hollow and eventually backfires because people can usually detect insincerity. What truly wins friends is the ability to see something genuinely admirable in others and to voice it openly. A clerk at a store, a colleague who quietly takes notes in meetings, a neighbor who waters their lawn regularly, everyone has qualities worth appreciating. Carnegie recounts stories of how people light up when they receive genuine recognition, and how such moments can transform relationships. The lesson is to cultivate the habit of noticing the good in others and expressing it without expecting anything in return. Another powerful principle Carnegie emphasizes is to arouse in the other person an eager want. Human beings, he reminds us, are fundamentally self-interested. Even when we appear altruistic, our actions are usually guided by internal desires. Too often, when we try to persuade someone, we frame arguments in terms of what we want, forgetting that the other person is motivated by their own goals and desires. For example, if you are trying to convince a child to study math, saying, "You should study because I want you to," rarely works. But reframing it as, "When you get better at math, you'll be able to play the video games you love more easily because you'll understand the scoring system," suddenly taps into the child's interests. Carnegie illustrates this point repeatedly, showing that if you want cooperation, you must see the world through the other person's eyes. A business negotiator who focuses only on his company's profit is unlikely to close a deal, but if he shows how the deal benefits the other party, both sides walk away satisfied. Carnegie is insistent that people are not swayed by logic alone. They are moved by emotions, by the feeling of being understood and respected. That is why one of his golden suggestions is to become genuinely interested in other people. This goes beyond small talk or politeness. It means taking a real, active curiosity in the lives, stories, and passions of those around you. Imagine being at a networking event and meeting someone new. Many people will launch into a monologue about themselves, their work, their achievements. But the person who asks thoughtful questions, "What do you enjoy most about your work?" or "How did you get started in that field?" and then listens attentively, will be remembered far more warmly. Carnegie cites examples of executives who built wide networks not by dazzling others with their own knowledge, but by listening intently and making others feel valued. This leads naturally to one of his simplest but most effective tips: remember people's names. Carnegie writes that a person's name is to them the sweetest sound in any language. Names carry identity, history, and pride. Forgetting or misusing someone's name suggests disinterest, while remembering and using it conveys respect and recognition. Think about the difference between being greeted as, "Hey you," versus "Good morning, Sarah." The second makes you feel seen as an individual. Carnegie tells stories of politicians and leaders who were legendary for their ability to remember names and details about thousands of acquaintances. This skill, he insists, can be cultivated by deliberate practice. writing down names, repeating them in conversation, associating them with images, and above all caring enough to remember. Carnegie's advice also delves into the art of conversation. He argues that the best conversationalists are not those who dominate the discussion, but those who encourage others to talk about themselves. Most people are more interested in their own concerns than in anything else, and they will walk away from a conversation feeling delighted if they had the chance to share their interests with someone who listened attentively. Carnegie encourages us to ask questions that invite others to elaborate and to respond with genuine curiosity. For example, if someone mentions they went hiking over the weekend, instead of shifting to your own hiking story, you might ask, "Where did you go? What was the trail like?" This makes the other person feel that their story matters. The principle of showing respect for other people's opinions is another central pillar. Carnegie warns that telling someone you're wrong is one of the fastest ways to damage rapport. People cling tightly to their beliefs, and when challenged head-on, they rarely change their minds. Instead, they dig in deeper to defend their stance. He suggests softer approaches, acknowledging the other person's point of view, finding areas of agreement, and gently leading them to consider alternatives without making them feel attacked. For example, in a workplace dispute, instead of saying, "That approach is wrong," one might say, "I see how you're looking at this. Have you considered this other angle as well?" This preserves dignity while opening space for dialogue. Carnegie also highlights the importance of admitting when you are wrong. Many of us fear that acknowledging mistakes will weaken our position, but often the opposite is true. When we admit faults quickly and openly, we disarm criticism and earn respect for our honesty. Think of a manager who makes a scheduling error. If they try to cover it up or shift blame, resentment builds. But if they say, "I messed this up and I appreciate your patience while I fix it," the team usually responds with forgiveness. Carnegie emphasizes that humility and transparency can turn potential conflicts into opportunities for trust building. Another persuasive tool Carnegie recommends is to begin conversations on a positive note and with agreement whenever possible. Starting with arguments or harsh tones creates resistance. But beginning with a friendly remark or by highlighting common ground lowers defenses. This is why skilled negotiators often start meetings by emphasizing shared goals rather than differences. If you want someone to agree with you on a controversial point, it helps to first get them nodding in agreement on smaller, less contentious points, creating a cooperative rhythm. When it comes to influencing behavior, Carnegie stresses the power of suggestion and encouragement over direct orders. Rather than telling someone what to do, it's more effective to ask questions that lead them to the conclusion themselves. For example, instead of saying to a subordinate, "You need to fix this report," you might ask, "Do you think this section could be clarified to make it stronger?" This not only avoids resentment but also makes the person feel ownership of the improvement. Similarly, offering encouragement for small improvements motivates further progress. People respond far better to recognition of effort than to constant reminders of shortcomings. Carnegie devotes significant attention to the art of leadership and how to inspire rather than coerce. Leaders who criticize harshly, issue rigid commands, and focus only on errors create a culture of fear. Those who inspire, encourage, and give people a sense of purpose create loyalty and creativity. He suggests praising even the slightest improvement, giving people a fine reputation to live up to, and making tasks feel like opportunities rather than burdens. For instance, telling an employee, "I know you're the kind of person who always delivers high-quality work, and I'm counting on you for this project," sets an expectation that inspires pride and commitment. What makes Carnegie's book so compelling is that it is not abstract theory but a collection of lived stories. He shares tales of salespeople who doubled their business by focusing on their clients' interests rather than their own, of presidents who disarmed critics with humility, of ordinary individuals who turned adversaries into allies by showing respect. These stories give the reader concrete images of how principles play out in real life. Underlying everything is Carnegie's fundamental philosophy: people long to feel important, respected, and appreciated. If you can make others feel this way sincerely, doors will open, cooperation will flow, and relationships will flourish. He cautions, though, that these principles must be applied with authenticity. Using them manipulatively, as tricks to get what you want without caring for the other person, will eventually be exposed and rejected. The spirit of the book is about cultivating genuine empathy and kindness as a way of life. Taken together, the lessons form a philosophy of human interaction that is both simple and profound. Smile more, remember names, listen intently, avoid criticism, show appreciation, admit mistakes, talk in terms of the other person's interests, encourage progress, and respect people's dignity. These may sound like common sense, but Carnegie reminds us that common sense is not always common practice. We forget these principles in the heat of arguments, in the rush of deadlines, or in the anxiety of trying to impress others. His book serves as a gentle but persistent reminder that effectiveness with people comes not from domination or cleverness but from empathy, respect, and genuine interest. To apply these principles, imagine practical scenarios. Suppose you're in a workplace where a colleague constantly interrupts. The instinct might be to snap, "Stop cutting me off." But using Carnegie's advice, you might instead wait for a calm moment and say, "I really value your enthusiasm and I'd love to hear your full thoughts. It would also help me if I could finish my ideas before we dive into discussion." This frames the feedback in a respectful, positive way that maintains goodwill. Or imagine you are in sales. Instead of pitching your product by listing its features, you could ask the customer questions about their needs, listen carefully, and then frame your product as the solution to their problems. By focusing on their interests rather than your sales quota, you're far more likely to close the deal. Even in family life, Carnegie's ideas shine. Think of a parent dealing with a messy child. Yelling, "Clean your room," often provokes resistance. But praising the child when they do tidy up, "I love how neat your desk looks, it makes the whole room brighter," encourages them to keep it up. Likewise, spouses who make a habit of noticing and expressing appreciation for small acts of kindness, "Thank you for making coffee this morning, it really made my day start better," tend to build warmer, more enduring relationships than those who take each other for granted. As one reads Carnegie, the overwhelming impression is that he believed in people's better nature. He saw that when we are treated with kindness and respect, we rise to the occasion. His book is less about manipulation and more about unlocking goodwill, cooperation, and mutual benefit. In this sense, it is both a guide to social success and a moral vision, a world where people interact with more empathy and generosity. Over 80 years later, his principles are echoed in modern psychology, leadership training, customer service, and relationship coaching. Neuroscience has shown that appreciation and encouragement activate reward centers in the brain, that empathy strengthens trust, and that criticism often triggers defensiveness rather than growth, validating what Carnegie intuited long before science caught up. His wisdom feels timeless because it is rooted in the unchanging realities of human nature. Ultimately, how to win friends and influence people is not just about winning friends or influencing people in the transactional sense. It is about developing a mindset of respect, curiosity, and kindness that enriches all areas of life. By practicing these principles, we not only build stronger relationships but also cultivate personal growth, becoming more patient, observant, humble, and generous. It is a book that encourages us to stop obsessing about ourselves and instead focus on the people around us, trusting that in doing so, we will find greater success and satisfaction. It is no exaggeration to say that applying Carnegie's advice can change lives. Imagine a workplace where managers lead with encouragement instead of criticism, where colleagues listen more than they talk, where names are remembered and efforts are recognized. Imagine a home where family members express appreciation daily, where disagreements are approached with respect rather than harsh words. Imagine friendships where curiosity and encouragement flow naturally. In such environments, cooperation and joy replace resentment and conflict. Carnegie's book shows us that this is not a utopian fantasy but a practical possibility, if we are willing to change our habits. And so, though written in another era, the book remains startlingly relevant. Its stories may feature telephone operators and door-to-door salesmen instead of smartphones and online meetings, but the principles resonate just as powerfully today. Whether you are a manager, a teacher, a parent, a salesperson, or simply someone who wants better relationships, the advice in this book offers tools to transform your interactions. The ultimate secret, as Carnegie gently reminds us, is simple. Treat people with sincerity, kindness, and respect, and you will win not only friends but also the kind of influence that creates lasting success. By Dale Carnegie. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.